First of all, Tim Cookie, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed of yourself because the iPad Mini 6 should not cost $500. This thing in its base configuration is 64 gigabytes. You know, since you wanted to rip us off with the storage, should cost no more than $399. Now, if you want to go $499, you need to at least give us 128 gigabytes of storage. So on behalf of all students, content creators, photographers, filmmakers, musicians, everybody who might possibly use an iPad Mini 6, we do not accept that. Now, with that being said, I absolutely love the iPad Mini 6. In fact, got a love-hate relationship with it. Let's talk about it. What's up, y'all? Tight shirt Terry Warfield. Let's just go ahead and get right into an iPad Mini 6. I want to talk about the things that really irritate me with this iPad 6, the things I really love about it, and ultimately if I think you should still grab one, even though this thing is friggin' overpriced. Now, real quick, this is the Starlight one. I don't know if y'all can see this. This thing is freaking gorgeous, super dope colors, probably a little bit overexposed, but you get the point. The first thing that I do not like about the iPad Mini 6 is I kind of talked about it already, but it's too freaking expensive. There's no way that this thing should cost more than $399 in base configuration. Base configuration in 2021, 2022 is unacceptable for $499. Now, I think it's important to define what I do with this iPad Mini. You know, I'm not doing super heavy stuff on it. I'm doing the occasional photo editing, mostly browsing and stuff like that. I'm not really doing video editing and stuff like that just because I find the screen too small in comparison to editing on like a MacBook or actual monitor. I'm sure some can get by without it, but for me, it's too small. So that's what I use it for: content creation, thumbnail creation, photo editing, stuff like that. The reason I'm saying that is because 64 gigabytes on this iPad has been sort of limited. The fact that Apple had to pigeonhole us either 64 or 256 with no 128 to me is crap, because for me 128 would have been perfect. The second thing that I really dislike, and I didn't think it was going to be a huge deal until I actually got a MacBook Pro with ProMotion and an iPhone 13 Pro with ProMotion, is the elephant in the room: 60 hertz display. Everybody said like, yo, 60 hertz is cool, I don't need it. Trust me, once you go from 120 or dynamic 120 back down to 60, it is jarring. I'm being honest. Now, with that said, is it the end of the world? No, but it's definitely a difference, and it kind of breaks the ecosystem immersion when you have all of these other devices Apple offers with these fantastic ProMotion displays, and then this bad boy for $500 doesn't have one. So yes, 60 hertz to me is a big deal. Now, it's not a reason to get rid of it, but it is a big deal. The second thing is I wish the screen did get brighter, because as you probably found out by now, the screen on the iPad Mini is not dim, but it's also not bright in comparison to some of the other Apple devices. The next thing I don't like, and it's not really a fault of the iPad Mini, it's more of a function of iPad OS, is that some of the apps just aren't optimized. So for example, like if I go into YouTube Studio right here, you can see how it doesn't take advantage of the full screen. On top of that, why is there all of this freaking padding? I don't understand why I got all of this empty real estate on both sides when I'm in landscape. And I tend to use the iPad Mini most in landscape. But even if I were to go into portrait orientation, look at all of this padding, unused space on the side of it. Why Apple has not updated this or changed it, I don't know. But to me, those small things that have not been updated yet to this point really break the immersion of the iPad Mini 6. Now, the next thing that I wish was different was I wish I had Face ID. I mean, the fingerprint sensor is good, don't get me wrong, it works. It's in a convenient location, even if you're holding it in portrait or landscape mode. Like, why didn't y'all put that in here? Oh, I know why you didn't put it in here. It's because you wanted to reserve it for the iPad Pro, blah, blah, blah. Unacceptable. I would have loved to see fingerprint with also Face ID. Fingerprint is cool, but Face ID would have just kicked it up a notch in my opinion. The other thing is, if it had Face ID, and let's just say they got rid of the fingerprint sensor, that would have fixed the issue where the volume buttons are in a weird spot. The volume buttons are right here at the bottom. So if I'm naturally holding this in landscape mode, I want my finger to be right here to unlock it, for me to adjust the volume, which I also inadvertently adjust the volume by mistake because the volume buttons are resting right here in my hand. I gotta like take my hand off the tablet to move up and down on the volume, which I know, first world problems, but hey, when you spending your hard-earned money, stuff like this has to be talked about. those are really my main complaints with the iPad mini 6. Now that that's out the way, real quick, before we move forward, I'll tell you about all the things I love. I want to tell you real quick, all of the social media overlays, graphics, and stuff in this video are for Motion VFX. If you use Final Cut Pro or DaVinci, hit the link down below. Trust me, you won't regret it. Also, music in this video is from Epidemic Sound. If you're a content creator, filmmaker, whatever the case may be, do not sabotage all your hard work by stealing music from YouTube, getting all of those copyright problems, copyright claims. Don't even go through all of that. Get yourself a free trial of Epidemic Sound down below. Try it free for 30 days. Trust me, you will thank me later. Let's get on to the stuff that I love about the iPad mini 6. First of all, portability. This is one of my favorite things about the iPad mini 6. When I had the iPad Pro, I found that, you know, I was kind of making myself use it to feel like I was getting my money's worth out of it. But the reality was, when I have a MacBook Pro, there was really no reason for me to be lugging that thing with a keyboard around the house because it wasn't portable. This is freaking portable. I love how small this is. I find myself around the house using the iPad mini more than my phone and my MacBook unless there's something that I absolutely need to do on my MacBook. Having a device that's not too big, that doesn't get in the way when I want to carry it around, is really clutch in my opinion. Now, as far as protection goes, I don't use the Apple case. I use this case from ESR, which also has a clasp on it for your Apple Pencil. Obviously, I took it off for the video, but this is what I use. Link down below in the description if you want to pick one up, and it's way cheaper than Apple. Moving on to the next thing, just the speediness of it. I know this is not like an M1 chip and all that stuff, but I've never done anything on this iPad where it made me wait. I've edited videos on here, although it's not my primary editing tool, but I edit photos on here. I do a whole bunch of stuff, a lot of multitasking, although it's not the best multitasking experience because the screen is small. Real quick, I want to throw this in here. Like if I open up LumaFusion and Photoshop at the same time in portrait, yeah, it doesn't really work out too well. And landscape, it works out pretty decent, but it's a byproduct of having a small screen size. But processor wise, speed wise, all that stuff, it's snappy. This thing has never made me wait. It doesn't lag. It doesn't do any of that stuff, at least in my use case. Love that about it. The next thing, I know I kind of dogged the fingerprint sensor early in the video, but for what it is, the fingerprint sensor works really good on here. And it's been useful, really, because, you know, you go out to places with a mask on, Face ID don't work unless you got an Apple Watch on and all that good stuff. So for what it is, the fingerprint sensor is actually really good. The next thing, which is one of the biggest things for me, is USB-C. Thank you, Apple, for not putting a freaking lightning port in the iPad mini 6. It is great to have all of my devices, drones, cameras, computers, everything USB-C, and this fits right in. I could use my SSDs with this. I could plug up external microphones via USB-C. Now, the next thing I really like is Apple Pencil support. Now, the reality is with the Apple Pencil, when I had the iPad Pro, I used this thing a lot. With the iPad mini 6, because the screen is so small, although I love the fact that the Apple Pencil is supported, I find that I don't use it a lot because, for example, if I'm taking a note, right, if I'm writing on the screen, my palm is right on the screen. Once I start writing, my palm falls off the screen real easy, and then there's no place to rest my palm, and then it's awkward to kind of just write in the air. So although I appreciate having the Apple Pencil, especially when I'm like editing Lightroom photos and stuff like that, I don't really find that I use it a whole lot. Center stage is amazing. I know it's something small. Some of y'all say, oh, I don't need center stage. Once you have it, it's actually a really great feature, especially if you do a lot of FaceTime calls, a lot of Zoom calls. I don't know why Apple isn't putting it in the MacBooks and stuff like that, but I love having center stage on the iPad mini 6. As far as the camera, I'm not one of those weirdos that goes taking pictures with my iPad. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are applications for it. I'm not saying that, but I don't use any of those applications. I'm not into like augmented reality and all that stuff. So for me, I don't have a reason to use the rear camera, but it is decent. I have tested it. The speakers are good. I'm not gonna do the whole test on here because it's not gonna do it justice how good they are. And then the battery life for me has been really good. Now, I do keep my brightness up quite a bit. Most times I turned it down for this video, but because the screen isn't that bright on here, I keep the brightness up a lot. Now, the byproduct of that is the battery drains faster, but even with the screen brightness being up, I find that I only have to charge this thing like every day, day and a half, and I do a lot of browsing on here, a lot of social networking, a lot of banking, a lot of YouTube watching, thumbnails and stuff like that. I find the battery is decent given the size of it. Overall, with that being said, I have a love-hate relationship with the iPad. I love it for what it is. It gives me a lot of what I wanted from the iPad Pro in a much smaller footprint. I've also been saying this since jump. I would have loved to see an iPad Pro mini version. An iPad Pro stuffed into a miniature body, Pro Motion, higher storage, M1, all of that stuff. I would have threw whatever money at Apple to get that, but that's not what we got. So for what it is, I love it because It is such a great little iPad. Probably my favorite iPad ever made, although not perfect. Let me know down there in the comments your thoughts and all that stuff. I'm sure there's a whole lot of stuff I missed. If I did, put that down there too. But I'm curious to know your thoughts, and I think I'm done rambling on for today. So till next time, I'm out of here. Piece of chicken grease, Terry Warfield. Peace.